on our menu. Newport Bay, bringing you the good stuff from the great Northwest.
That's never coming out.
Dharma, Athena Onassis, and Tammy Faye's makeover on E.T.
Here at the Kennedy Space Center, John Glenn and the U.S. space program on the spot and in the spotlight, literally. The towering Discovery launch pad the night before scheduled blastoff to history and publicity. Widespread flooding in Central America as a killer hurricane creeps along the Caribbean coast. An Olympic gymnast wins her legal battle to be free of her parents' control. And taking to the deregulated airlines, why passengers are complaining more and sometimes paying more to fly.
This is the CBS Evening News, with Dan Rather reporting tonight from the Kennedy Space Center.
Good evening. The sun is set here at the Kennedy Space Center, but NASA says it's blue skies all the way for John Glenn's return to space tomorrow in the crew of Space Shuttle Discovery. No weather worries, hitches, or glitches. Still, NASA's spaceflight chief does admit some jitters and high anxiety today with the 77-year-old Senator John Glenn on board. Under the bright lights and the eyes of the world, the countdown and last launch pad work are underway tonight. The familiar eerie scene. Liftoff is scheduled for 2 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow. CBS's Cheryl Atkinson has some new information on this high-profile space shot. Cheryl?
Dan, what this really amounts to for NASA is a major production, something it hasn't had to do in this big of a way in many, many years. Throngs of people are on the way to see a front-row seat to John Glenn's second chapter of space flight.
John Glenn and the rest of the shuttle crew were all smiles as they posed for friends and family the day before Glenn's historic return to space.
A little different trip this time.
There's now a 0 chance of a weather delay, and the countdown...
This is right up there with the best of them.
...has been smooth, with hundreds of dignitaries and politicians expected, including President Clinton and the Prince of Spain.
Okay, ma'am.
Tight as a vice security has now gripped Kennedy Space Center. They're even checking underneath the vehicles by having them drive over special cameras. People from around the country are already converging into this part of Florida. 300,000 are expected, all eager to elbow their way into a good view of Glenn's blastoff.
If and when crunch time comes, people in the Launch Control Center will not know that there's 200 politicians, the president, and 3,700 media people on this site.
Today, the crew ended up too busy to take their traditional pre-launch cruise in their jet trainers, but they did take a spin together on the ground.
Hey, buckle up.
Tomorrow, an entirely different journey.
It all begins tomorrow morning with a crew breakfast. Then John Glenn and the others will be briefed on the weather, the progress of the countdown, and after that, if all goes well, they'll suit up, climb aboard, and hopefully be on their way. Dan?
Thanks, Cheryl. John Glenn tonight stands to bridge a time and space gap that no one's filled before. Just miles away, but 36 years apart and light years away in complexity are the launch pads of Glenn then and Glenn now. I chatted with John Glenn one-on-one recently, and it turns out he says his biggest worry this time out isn't the physical toll. Now, in the upcoming flight, what in your mind figures to be the toughest part of it?
My biggest concern is that I bring back good information and that I do the research I've been assigned to do and do it well and bring it back, because I really do believe that if we do this right, it opens up a whole new area of research with regard to the elderly right here on Earth, things that can benefit people here on Earth and eventually maybe help take away some of the frailties of old age as we know them. That to me is exciting stuff, and I don't want to goof up on it.
Physically, what's been the toughest part of getting ready?
Physically, well, I've always stayed in reasonably good shape, and so getting back in shape again wasn't really the toughest part. And at my age, I can't run as fast or as far as the younger people or things like that. I suppose my flexibility is not what it was when I was 30 or 40 years younger.
Now, you're talking about getting in and out of the hatches and that sort of thing?
Yes, getting in and out of hatches, and I can do it all right. There's no problem, except where the other people bend over and walk right through a particular hatch. I may have to squirm a little bit and get my legs around a certain way and And I'm not quite as flexible as I once was. I wish I'd started more flexibility training about 20 years ago. But that hasn't been, I don't want to indicate that's an impediment. That hadn't been a major problem. I told a lot of people, I don't think I've ever worked harder in my life nor enjoyed it more. Doing great.
Godspeed, John Glenn.
Thank you. Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Now, joining us here live, Dr. Bernadine Healy of Ohio State University, our CBS News medical consultant, former head of the National Institutes of Health, and also friend of Senator John Glenn. Doctor, we just heard Glenn say that he's not worried about the physical aspects of this stress. What about that? Should he be?
Well, I think anybody who is his age, you have to worry about his cardiovascular stress. When he is up there, he's going to go from normal gravity to hypergravity. When he's at launch to microgravity and then back again. That means lots of fluid shifts within his circulatory system. And young people adapt very well. Older people lose those adaptations, and we'll have to see how he feels up there.
Well, now, they never did explain why one of the planned experiments was removed from the Glenn plan. Any ideas what that's about?
Well, in a baseline study in which they were doing numerous battery of tests on his heart and his lungs and other things, they came up with a physiologic abnormality. They did not divulge what it is, but they said that the NASA doctors who look after him said it's okay, he is still space ready, even if he can't be clinical trial ready. I think we have to ask, Dan, I hope that they share medical records of Mr. Glenn up in space, Senator Glenn in space, better than they have what he did in the laboratory.
Well, we'll soon know.
Yes, we will.
Dr. Bernadine Healy, thanks. CBS will have more space mission news later in this broadcast, including a rocket scientist, yes, a real rocket scientist, who helped NASA light the lights from the start. And, of course, CBS will have live special coverage tomorrow of the Discovery launch and John Glenn's return to space. It begins at 1:30 tomorrow afternoon Eastern Time. Traveling in space much closer to Earth right now is the killer hurricane named Mitch. This was the scene today in the Central American country of Honduras, which got as much as 2 feet of rain and widespread flooding. At least 32 deaths are reported. The eye of the hurricane is all but stalled off the coast of Honduras, the impact being felt as far north as Mexico. CBS's Byron Pitts is in Cancun.
Today, like a wounded animal, a weaker Hurricane Mitch proved it is still dangerous, can still change lives or take lives in its path from the Yucatan Peninsula to the northern coast of Honduras. In Honduras, there have been mudslides and flash flooding in villages tucked along the mountains as Mitch dumped more than 2 feet of rain in one day. Here, some 400 miles north of Honduras, off the coast of Cancun, where the wind is strong and seas are rough, a man from Connecticut here on vacation was blown off a catamaran. Authorities don't expect to find his body for weeks. Cancun is a city that survives off 1 million American tourists every year. Late today, the lines were still long at the airport as worried U.S. vacationers try to go home early.
They weren't telling us much, but the Weather Channel was. And the Weather Channel was making us a little nervous.
A city braced for Hurricane Mitch because it remembers Hurricane Gilbert in 1988. Tonight, more and more people have decided not to wait around to see what legacy Mitch might leave. Byron Pitts, CBS News, Cancun.
President Clinton will be here in Florida tomorrow to watch the space shuttle. Later on tonight's CBS Evening News, Republicans gamble on a last-ditch campaign strategy aimed at the president. A young athlete wins her battle for independence. And more from an historic launch pad as the CBS Evening News rolls on from here at the Kennedy Space Center.
We ease life's pressures. We help make lives more memorable. We're the people of Pfizer. We develop medicines that make the world a better place. We help people love one another. We help keep families strong. We take care of best friends. We spend over $2 billion a year on research. That's why we believe we'll introduce more new medicines for more diseases than anyone else. At Pfizer, we're not just looking for cures for the future. We're going to find them. something incurable is our passion. Pfizer, life is our life's work.
There are those among us with very simple tastes. They only want the best. And for them, there's Fancy Feast gourmet cat food. Exceptionally moist and delicious. Fancy Feast. Good taste is easy to recognize.
Nobody does it like you.
To deep clean your carpet and upholstery, you can get a Hoover SteamVac Ultra and pay once. Or pay these guys
Nobody
every time.
does it like you.
The countdown runs down toward the space shuttle launch and the important congressional midterm elections of next Tuesday. The Republicans have just launched a new advertising blitz, attempting to make the elections a referendum on President Clinton and the Monica Lewinsky affair. CBS News White House correspondent Scott Pelley has the president's response to that. Scott?
Dan, with 6 days to go before the election, the president today declared that he has rededicated himself to his presidency and atoned for the Lewinsky scandal. Mr. Clinton suggested that voters should go to the polls to vote on the issues, not his fitness to be president.
I hope very much that they have seen that I'm doing my best to atone for it. I hope they can sense the rededication and the intensified efforts I'm making for the cause of peace around the world, for the cause of prosperity at home.
Mr. Clinton was responding to a new Republican ad campaign that targets the Lewinsky scandal. The commercials will air only in congressional districts where polls show that voters are concerned about the obstruction of justice investigation.
In every election, there is a big question to think about. This year, the question is, should we reward Bill Clinton?
What'd you tell your kids? I didn't know what to say. It's wrong. For 7 months he lied to us. But aren't there other things to do? I'd say it's okay to lie.
So even if there's one person who doesn't want the Republicans in charge, remember, it's your choice. For balance, vote Republican.
It wouldn't be a very persuasive argument to me if I were a citizen out there, because I would always be trying to think, as a citizen, what is best for my family, for my children, for my community, and for my country.
Both parties are desperate to motivate their core voters. There are 51 close congressional elections next week, and the turnout is expected to be low. But the White House will keep Mr. Clinton from campaigning for the most part because there's a fear that his presence on the campaign trail would do many candidates more harm than good. Dan?
Scott Pelley at the White House. Britain's High Court today threw out arrest warrants for Chile's former strongman Augusto Pinochet. The British ruled that a Spanish judge lacked authority to bring Pinochet to trial for torture, terror, and genocide while he was president of Chile. However, the British court ordered that Pinochet remain in custody in London pending an appeal. Up next here on CBS, aggressive reporting in an Eye on America investigation.
The CBS Evening News and tonight's Eye on America segment are sponsored by Tylenol. Take comfort in our strength.
Tylenol House Call from Extra Strength Tylenol.
Your medicine cabinet. You use it every day. But do you really know what's in there?
Not everything. No. I never thought about it.
My medicine cabinet? Well, it pays to take a good look in your medicine cabinet. You might be surprised to find that you may have a prescription drug that could interact with an over-the-counter medication, altering the effectiveness or safety of one or both of the drugs. So here's some tips for you and your medicine cabinet. First, read the label for any warnings about drug interactions. Then, get rid of all out-of-date medicines, and those you don't take anymore. Who needs them? And if you're one of the millions of people who takes a prescription drug, remember, the pain reliever associated with the least risk of drug interaction and side effects is the medicine in Tylenol. So check out your medicine cabinet. Any questions? Check with your doctor or pharmacist.
Tylenol House Call is brought to you by Extra Strength Tylenol.
Right now, you can get a complete pair of great-looking glasses for only $99 at LensCrafters in your choice of hundreds of the latest frame styles.
LensCrafters $99 complete pair sale.
This is a great offer. People should definitely not miss this.
Hurry, offer ends soon.
I'm 64. Is there anything I can do to stop bone loss?
Absolutely. Here's proof. In a landmark clinical study, Caltrate actually stopped bone loss in women at risk for osteoporosis, whatever your age.
It's never too late for Caltrate.
The verdict is in. Now jurors are speaking now to find out why they found the defendants not guilty in the Christmas tree beating case. That story at 6.
It's been 20 years now since airline deregulation began, with much fanfare and big promises that it would mean more competition, better service, and lower fares. In some ways, deregulation has succeeded, but many people who fly are still asking, what happened? CBS correspondent Bob Orr, who covers the aviation beat for CBS News, has an in-depth investigation for tonight's Eye on America.
These days, changing planes at busy airports is like battling LA's rush hour.
It's cattle call, actually, when you go to an airport now.
The price you pay for an airline ticket is a moving and sometimes very expensive target.
I have a personal kind of game where I ask everyone who's sitting around me what they paid for the same seat. And often, if you ask 6 people, you have 6 different prices.
And as for dining in the skies, well...
Sometimes they have like a little deli sandwich or something that's freezing cold, and, you know, the turkey's kind of frozen to the bread, which is soggy from being in the freezer.
Welcome to flying in 1998, a less than glamorous adventure.
But 20 years after the government first allowed airlines to set their own schedules, routes, and prices, more Americans than ever are flying. And after years of losses, big airlines are making big profits.
Hi, how are you?
With deregulation, ticket prices on average have been cut by 1/3, while the number of flights has doubled.
Deregulation really has brought democracy to the skies with lower prices for all of our passengers.
Well, not for all. Take Decatur, Illinois. Like dozens of other small cities, Decatur lost out when airlines reassigned their jets to more profitable markets, leaving behind small planes and spotty service.
We have not seen fares go down. We have not seen service increase, and that's what deregulation was supposed to do. It didn't happen here.
What has happened, critics say, is that a cartel has evolved. America's 6 largest airlines control 74% of all routes and have a hammerlock on the so-called hub airports. New, oftentimes low-cost competitors are routinely pushed out.
All we're asking for is fair competition.
Jerry Murphy, the president of small, struggling Kiwi Airlines, got a lesson in economic hardball this summer when his airline tried to crack the Minneapolis market, offering seats to Newark, New Jersey for $87 with a 3-day advance purchase. Northwest Airlines, which operates 3/4 of all flights in Minneapolis, quickly countered with a $67 fare. Kiwi soon pulled out, and Northwest canceled its cheap fare. It now charges $583 for the same ticket.
Competition is one thing. Coming in and attempting to force a carrier out is something totally different.
Northwest argues it was just competing in a free market. But Kiwi plans to file a complaint with U.S. Secretary of Transportation Rodney Slater, who is proposing a crackdown on what's called predatory pricing.
What we're trying to do is to ensure that there is competition across the board for everyone.
Major airlines are fighting Slater's proposed policy change.
The bottom line is we should have the same right as everyone else to lower our prices and compete.
It's a battle the industry is not likely to lose. 20 years into deregulation, a select few big airlines, enriched and empowered by a free market, have all the clout. Any calls for change will only be embraced when there's money to be made. In Washington, I'm Bob Orr for Eye on America.
On the CBS Worldwide Market Watch, Brazil announced a major economic overhaul today. That was a condition for a bailout by the U.S.-backed International Monetary Fund. Michael Jordan is stepping down as chairman and chief executive officer of CBS Corporation, the parent of CBS News. CBS President Mel Karmazin will be the new CEO of CBS. And the television industry makes history of a sort tomorrow when about 40 stations broadcast a high-definition television signal of the shuttle launch.
Dandruff, psoriasis, scalp dermatitis. If you asked all the dermatologists listed here to recommend a therapeutic shampoo, Neutrogena T-Gel would come out #1. T-Gel works on all 3 itchy, flaky scalp conditions. Neutrogena T-Gel, it works.
You know, the last I looked, the average workday lasts more than a few hours, right?
Right.
But average pain relievers may work for a few hours, then quit. Well, now there's a lead. Alieve's the one with the strength to work on arthritis pain all day long with just 2 pills. It would take 8 Tylenol to do that. So, if your pain reliever isn't putting in a full day's work,
Fire it.
fire it and take Aleve. 2 pills, all day relief, works for me.
The party's in there, so why am I out here? Gas. Again.
Maximum strength Phazine has 33% more medicine doctors recommend.
One little pill, and I'm back.
Serious medicine for serious gas. Phazine.
You don't have to be president of the United States, or a superstar athlete, or a comic book superhero to be the most important person in the world to somebody. At Cigna, we offer life, accident, and disability insurance, so you can take care of and protect your family. But isn't that what being a superhero is all about? Cigna, a business of caring.
And the truth is, if Helen wasn't out of town, I never would have met Marie.
Meet Marie Callender's entrees and dinners.
I've been with Helen 21 years, but Marie really knows what I like.
Made with Marie's personal touches, like adding 3 cheeses to her stuffed pasta and using home-style gravy on her country fried pork chop.
I can't wait to introduce Marie to Helen.
Marie Callender's. You'll find her in the freezer section.
For me, there's only Marie.
Their lives were picture perfect. Then he vanished. 15 years later, a shocking discovery. Dad's double life, 48 hours Thursday.
They're still talking in the contract dispute between the National Basketball Association and the Players Union, but with no settlement in sight and the players locked out by the owners, the NBA today formally canceled 2 more weeks of the season. That wipes out the entire November schedule. Another dispute involving a star athlete was settled today by a judge. CBS's Jim Axelrod has the facts on that story.
In the interest of Dominique Elena Moceanu.
In a Houston courtroom this afternoon, Dominique Moceanu got her wish. One of America's sweethearts is now a legal adult. No longer can her parents control her or her money. Last week, the 17-year-old Olympic gold medalist ran away from home, accusing her parents of looting millions from the trust fund she built with her appearance fees and endorsements. The ruling means she is now in charge of her own money.
This wasn't very easy for me. This was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. It was even harder than competing in the Olympics, but it was something I felt I had to do for my future, for my life, for my career.
Moceanu says those dazzling smiles mask the pain caused by parents pushing her relentlessly to gymnastics glory, starting when she was only 3. They made the decision, she said, to trade a normal childhood for Olympic gold.
We love her very much.
When the story first broke, her father seemed puzzled, blaming Dominique's coaches for the trouble and claiming he gave her everything a child could want.
I never dictate to her to go into the gym or school. She chose to be a gymnast.
That's a choice Dominique Moceanu says she'll continue to make, promising to go for the gold again in the next Olympic Games, and then decide for herself how to spend all the other gold that would then follow. Jim Axelrod, CBS News, Houston.
Next on CBS Live coverage from the Kennedy Space Center, we'll introduce you to a quiet American who put John Glenn where he is today and where he was in '62.
Nine out of 10 HMOs have prescription drug coverage. We all know how expensive the best medicines get, but it's only a small copay for most HMO patients. HMOs, the health care you want at a price you can afford.
There's an athlete amongst us, disguised as a mother and a neighbor. And when most of us are still sleeping, she's running. She also takes the vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, and folic acid in Women's Ultra Mega Multivitamins made by General Nutrition Centers. Tomorrow, she'll get up and run some more. Women's Ultra Mega Multivitamins made exclusively by GNC. Live strong. Live well.
You didn't dial 10-10-321?
I admit it, Oscar. Sometimes I forget.
I told you dial 10-10-321 to save money. 50% when you talk over 20 minutes.
I know. I saw my phone bill, and those 10-10-321 calls were much cheaper.
And it's so easy.
I know.
So from now on, you'll always dial 10-10-321 first, right?
Oh, yeah. I learned my lesson.
Pretty good advice, huh? Maybe I should be the trainer. Who doesn't want to save 50%?
Heading up the research team, I do 3 or 4 dives a day. Long hours, bag lunches, but I can't afford to get slowed down by irregularity. My doctor recommended Metamucil. It's not a chemically altered fiber, not an artificial stimulant. The only leading brand with 100% natural fiber is Metamucil. Keeps me regular, gently. So the only thing dragging is the anchor.
Metamucil, the doctor's natural choice for regularity.
HMOs promote regular screenings for breast, colon, and cervical cancer. So cancer is detected earlier in HMOs, and faster treatment saves more lives. HMOs, the healthcare you want at a price you can afford.
You know the old saying, you don't have to be a rocket scientist. Well, maybe anywhere but here. So tonight, meet an original rocket man who helped put John Glenn into orbit, the U.S. in space, and eventually a man on the moon. Way back when, Mercury rocket man, innovator, and originator George Page took us on a walk through history today to a time when getting to space was seat of the pants, pretty low tech, and nothing was tried and true. The concrete is torn apart now, the once strong steel rusted and crumbling. But Complex 14, John Glenn's old launch pad, is hallowed ground nonetheless, a monument to the early days of the Mercury missions and the men who made it happen.
It's a very nostalgic feeling because this used to be a beehive of activity.
George Page was there from the start, one of the men responsible for launching the Atlas rocket that propelled John Glenn's tiny capsule beyond the Earth's pull. But the technology was primitive, and without the benefit of even a television feed, Page resorted to monitoring the launch through a periscope from beneath a concrete reinforced bunker.
If anything untoward occurred, like an engine explosion or something like that, my job was to tell them that abort.
That was 36 years ago. This is the old Mercury Control Center today. It's a museum of scopes and buttons, part of a relic seemingly frozen in time. It all looks so primitive now.
Of course, back then we thought we had the latest of everything, but when you compare it with what's out there today, it's sadly lacking.
Under intense pressure to beat the Russians, they worked with unrelenting resolve and a recognition that they would more than occasionally fail.
You learn something from every failure.
The Atlas rocket was nowhere near as reliable as today's shuttle. 1 of every 3 Atlas launches failed, but not John Glenn. Glenn made it to the heavens and back, thanks to pioneers like George Page, who was once a young man.
We did party pretty hard. There's no question about that. I still don't remember which swimming pool I got thrown in.
A rocket man in his element. And that's part of his and our world tonight. For the CBS Evening News, Dan Rather reporting. CBS will be here again tomorrow at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida for the shuttle launch. See you there.